Officer Paul Mills, a white police officer, was aggressively questioning a well-dressed black man near the security checkpoint. "Sir, I need you to place your hands where I can see them," Paul barked at the man. The man, calm and composed, raised his hands slightly. "Officer, I've shown you my identification. I am Chief Leonard Harris, recently appointed to lead the precinct downtown. I'm just here for my connecting flight." Paul didn't seem to hear the explanation. "I don't care what you claim to be. You're acting suspicious, and I'm taking you in for questioning." Leonard's voice remained steady. "I'm not resisting, officer, but this is unnecessary." Nearby, a group of travelers began to murmur. Some reached for their phones, recording the unfolding scene. Among them was a figure with a distinct presence, dressed in a blue-black suit and red tie. It was President-elect Donald Trump, on his way to a private meeting in Washington, D.C. He had paused mid-stride, his sharp eyes fixed on the escalating situation. Trump leaned towards one of his aides, whispering, "Who is that officer harassing?" The aide hesitated. "I'm not sure, sir, but it seems he's a high-ranking official." Trump stepped forward and approached the scene. His towering presence and unmistakable voice caused the onlookers to part. "What's going on here?" Trump asked in authoritative but calm tone. Officer Paul turned, his expression shifting between confusion and irritation. The man spoke out, "Sir, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm only here to catch a flight, but got lost." That's when the officer bumped into me and started suspecting me of whatever he thinks. Besides, I told him I'm a police chief, but he didn't even care to listen to me. "Oh, really? He did that?" Trump said, his voice growing firmer. Trump turned to the officer and asked him, "Did the man tell you he is Chief Leonard Harris? Is that true?" Paul faltered. "He claims he is, but I've been following protocol." Trump glanced at Leonard, then back at Paul. "Protocol? From where I stand, it looks more like profiling." The murmurs grew louder as more people gathered. Paul's confidence wavered, but he maintained his grip on Leonard's arm. "Sir, this isn't your place to intervene." Trump's face hardened. "I think you've forgotten who I am. Now, release him." Paul hesitated, but released Leonard's arm reluctantly. Leonard adjusted his jacket, his expression calm but resolute. "Thank you, Mr. Trump." "You're welcome," Trump replied. He turned back to Paul with a sharp voice. "This man is not only innocent, but also your superior. Do you understand what you've done?" Paul's face turned pale as realization dawned on him. Trump kept speaking to Paul. He said, "Let me make something clear. This kind of behavior is unacceptable, and it won't go unpunished." The crowd erupted into applause as Leonard and Trump walked away, leaving Paul frozen in place, a storm of regret brewing in his mind. Donald Trump and Chief Leonard Harris disappeared into the VIP lounge. Officer Paul Mills stood frozen at the checkpoint. He could feel the weight of every onlooker's eyes, their phones still pointed at him. For the first time in his career, he didn't feel in control. Inside the lounge, Leonard sat across from Trump, sipping a glass of water. His composure never wavered, but his gratitude was evident. "Mr. Trump, I appreciate your intervention back there. That situation could have escalated badly." Trump leaned forward, clasping his hands. "Leonard, no one should be treated like that. You handled yourself with dignity, but that officer, he's a problem, and I plan to see that it's dealt with." Leonard nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "I've dealt with men like him before. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last. But as a leader, I can't let this slide." "I agree," Trump said. "But we're not just going to let it go quietly. That officer needs to understand the weight of his actions." Before Leonard could respond, Trump's aide entered the room, holding a phone. "Mr. Trump, the airport security director is on the line. He heard about the incident and wants to address it immediately." Trump took the phone. "Director, this is Donald Trump." "Yes, I witnessed the entire thing." That officer mishandled a police chief, and it was disgraceful. I want this addressed publicly. No sweeping it under the rug." Leonard watched as Trump navigated the call with precision. It was clear he wasn't just stepping in for appearances. He meant every word. Meanwhile, Officer Paul found himself in a small conference room, summoned by his superior, Captain Eleanor Blake. She was a no-nonsense woman. Paul shifted uneasily in his seat. "Paul," she began to speak. "Do you have any idea who you just detained?" Paul cleared his throat. "He said he was a chief, but I didn't believe him." "You didn't believe him?" Captain Blake's voice rose. "That man is Chief Leonard Harris, the new head of your precinct. Do you realize the humiliation you've caused us?" "I was following protocol." "Stop," Blake interrupted, slamming her hand on the table. "Don't insult my intelligence. This wasn't protocol. It was profiling, plain and simple." Paul opened his mouth to protest, but closed it when Blake shot him a glare. "Effective immediately, you're suspended pending a full investigation." "You're lucky that's all for now," Blake snapped. "But if Chief Harris decides to press further, there could be much worse coming your way." Back in the VIP lounge, Leonard finished his water and stood. "Thank you again, Mr. Trump. But I think it's time I address this officer directly." Trump smiled. "That's the kind of leadership we need. Let me know if you need backup." Leonard chuckled. "I think I can handle this one." The two men shook hands, and Leonard made his way to the precinct office at the airport. By now, word of the incident had reached every corner of the terminal. Employees and travelers alike craned their necks as Leonard walked by. When Leonard entered the precinct office, Captain Blake was waiting for him. She greeted him with a respectful nod. "Chief Harris, I deeply apologize for what happened earlier. Officer Mills is being dealt with." Leonard nodded. "Thank you, Captain Blake. I'd like to speak to Officer Mills personally." Blake hesitated, but gestured to a nearby door. Leonard stepped inside to find Paul sitting stiffly, his face a mix of defiance and fear. "Officer Mills," Leonard began. "Do you know why I'm here?" Paul looked away and responded, "To reprimand me, I assume." Leonard folded his arms and replied, "Not just to reprimand you, but to teach you something. I have faced men like you my entire career, officers who judge first and think later. That stops now. Not just for me, but for every person you're supposed to serve. Your suspension is just the beginning. You'll face the consequences of your actions, and I'll make sure this precinct becomes a place where respect and fairness come first."